6, me, Mr. A, back with story time for another day, and carrying on with Tom's Midnight Garden by Philippa Pearce. Let's see if Tom can get his head through the door. With a convulsive effort, eyes closed, lips sealed, Tom dragged his head through the door and stood dizzy, dazed, but whole on the far side of it. When his vision cleared, he saw that he was standing directly in front of the potting shed and the gardener. Tom had never been front to front with the gardener before. He was a large-framed young man with a weather-reddened face and eyes the colour of the sky itself. They now looked straight through Tom and far away. Into his mouth he was putting the last fragments of a thick bacon and bread sandwich. He finished the sandwich, closed his eyes and spoke aloud. "For all good things I thank the Lord, and may he keep me from all the works of the devil, that he hurt me not." He spoke with a country voice, clipping short his t's and widening his vowels, so that Tom had to listen attentively to understand him. The gardener opened his eyes again, and reaching behind him, brought out another sandwich. Tom wondered in some surprise whether he had said grace after every sandwich. Perhaps he never knew how many he was going to eat. The gardener went on eating, and Tom turned away to look around him. He was in an orchard that also served for the keeping of hens, the pegging out of washing and the kindling of a bonfire. Beyond the orchard were meadows and trees, from among which rose the roofs of what must be a village. While he looked, Tom was also keeping a sharp eye upon the gardener. When the man had really finished his meal, he grasped the handles of his wheelbarrow to return to his work in the garden. In a moment, Tom was beside him. He had not at all enjoyed the experience of going through a shut door, and he did not now intend to have to repeat it. This time there was an easy way through. He got nimbly up into the empty barrow and was wheeled back into the garden in comfort. It was a long time before Tom literally forced his way through a door again. Anyway, he had seen the orchard, and that was enough in that direction. Other doors could wait. Meanwhile, he climbed the low wall at the bottom of the garden and explored the wood beyond. On the third side of the garden, he wormed his way through the hedge again and crossed the meadow. The only surprise there was the boundary, a river, clear, gentle-flowing, shallow, and green with reeds and water plants. The garden and its surroundings, then, were not in themselves outside the natural order of things. Nor was Tom alarmed by his own unnatural abilities. Yet to some things his mind came back again and again, troubled. The constant fine weather, the rapid coming and going of the seasons and the times of day, the feeling of being watched. One night all his uneasiness came to a head. He had gone from his bed in the flat upstairs and crept down to the hall at about midnight as usual. He had opened the garden door. He had found for the first time that it was night too in the garden. The moon was up, but clouds fled continuously across its face. Although there was this movement in the upper air, down below there was none. A great stillness lay within the garden, and a heavier heat than at any noon. Tom felt it. He unbuttoned his pyjama jacket and let it flap open as he walked. One could smell the storm coming. Before Tom had reached the bottom of the garden, the moon had disappeared, obscured altogether by a cloud. In its place came another light that seemed instantaneously to split the sky from top to bottom, and a few seconds later came the thunder. Tom turned back to the house. As he reached the porch, the winds broke out into the lower air, with heavy rain and a deathly chilling of the temperature. Demons of the air seemed let loose in that garden, and, with the increasing frequency of the lightning, Tom could watch the foliage of the trees ferociously tossed and torn by the wind, and at the corner of the lawn, the tall, tapering fir tree swinging to and fro, its ivy-wreathed arms struggling wildly in the tempest like the arms of a swaddling child. To Tom it seemed that the fir tree swung more widely each time. "It can't be blown over," thought Tom. "Strong trees are not often blown over." As if in answer to this, and while the wind still tore, there came the loudest thunder, with a flash of lightning that was not to one side nor even above, but seemed to come down into the garden itself, to the tree. The glare was blinding, and Tom's eyes closed against it, although only for a part of a second. When he opened them again, he saw the tree like one flame, and falling. In the long instant while it fell, there seemed to be a horrified silence of all the winds, and in that quiet Tom heard something, a human cry, an "oh!" of the terror he felt himself. It came from above him, from the window of one of the upper rooms. Then the fir tree fell, stretching its length, although Tom did not know this until much later, along the grave beds of the asparagus in the kitchen garden. It fell in darkness, in the resumed rushing of wind and rain. Tom was shaken by what he had seen and heard. He went back into the house and shut the garden door behind him. Inside, the grandfather clock ticked peacefully. The hall was still. He wondered if perhaps he had only imagined what he had seen outside. He opened the door again and looked out. The summer storm was still raging. The flashes of lightning were distant now. They lit up the ugly gap in the trees round the lawn where the fir tree had stood. The tree had fallen. That had been a sight terrible enough, but the cry from above troubled Tom even more. On the next night came the greatest shock of all. He opened the garden door as usual and surveyed the garden. At first he did not understand what was odd in its appearance. Then he realized that its usual appearance was in itself an oddity. In the trees round the lawn there was no gap. The ivy-grown fir tree still towered above them. All right, time. Okay, thanks very much. I'll be back again. It's the end of the chapter, so I'll be back with chapter 7 tomorrow. All right, take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.